The Kingdom of Koka is celebrating 10 years free of any conflict or war, though it also marks the 10th anniversary of King Eel's late father's death, while his only daughter celebrates her 16th birthday just a few days later. The princess, Yona, is frantically preparing for that person's arrival, complaining her unique crimson hair is too unruly and upkeep is impossible. The king asks Hawk, one of the 5 tribes' generals and Yona's personal bodyguard, what he thinks. Her hair is beautiful, but her brain, well, that's another story. As soon as he arrives, the princess rushes to meet Suwon, her cousin, 3 years her senior. Without looking, she runs right into him, her face turning as red as her hair. Greeting her like she's a child, Suwon is quick to seek out the king and Hawk, leaving her disappointed. She has a flashback to them as children, holding hands while they slept after he had wiped away her tears. She's been in love with him ever since. While Hawk and Suwon practice archery on horseback, she's eager to join them, but King Eel is a pacifist who refuses to let his daughter wield a weapon. Riding with Suwon, she lies about being engaged to Hawk when Suwon admits he's had multiple proposals. Unlike those two lying to each other's faces, the king is serious about Yona finding a husband. Hawk is actually a very reasonable candidate. However, there is one person he forbids her from marrying, Suwon. The princess cries in the hallway. She's suddenly terrified by the presence of a shadowy figure who gives chase. Remembering how insurgents murdered her mother, she runs into Suwon's room. He offers to take her to Hawk, but Yona says she lied about their engagement. She's always been in love with him. But Suwon smacks her hand away. He's only ever thought of her as a little sister and doesn't know what to say. Yona's birthday takes place 5 days later. Suwon takes her away from the party and gives her a hairpin, dispelling her insecurities. Hawk increases security, feeling something isn't right. That night, Yona runs to her father's chambers to change his mind, but she finds Suwon holding a sword, her father on the ground in a pool of his own blood. Suwon admits her father died by his hand. He's been waiting for this moment his whole life. All this time, she's had Suwon all wrong. Hawk overhears guards talking about their treachery and steps in. Suwon tells Yona the king wasn't as innocent and peaceful as she thought. When he ascended to the throne, instead of his older brother, Suwon's father, King Eel made an ill-fated decision to take his own brother's life. Suwon's second-in-command realizes the princess saw everything. They can't let her leave alive. Before the corrupt guards kill Yona, Hawk swoops in to save her, going head-to-head against Suwon while the guards prepare to behead the princess. Hawk stands down, but Min Su, one of the young servants, fires an arrow that has no chance in hell of hitting anything, but gives them a chance to escape. He takes the princess' shawl, getting shot down by far superior archers, though it gives Hawk and Yona enough time to slip through the front doors. They travel through the mountains, but the princess is becoming weary. She's never been outside the castle in her entire life. 3 years prior, while Hawk was next in line to become the Wind Tribe's general, King Eel asked him to be Yona's bodyguard. Though with the king's feelings towards wielding weapons, Hawk declined. How was he supposed to protect her without one? As he leaves the castle, Yona runs after him to protect her from the Fire General's son making advances. Hawk wants nothing to do with her, since he becomes putty in her hands whenever he's around her. The guards are too afraid to step in, but Hawk can't take it anymore. Stepping up, he acts as her betrothed. When the Fire General's son draws his sword, King Eel grabs the blade without so much as wincing as his hand starts bleeding. Hawk realizes that the king isn't the coward everyone says he is. As kids, Hawk and Suwon try to take care of Yona after she catches a cold in the winter, causing them all to come down with a cold. Hawk's adopted grandfather and leader of the Wind Tribe, Elder Moondog, visits, as does Suwon's father. But Yona wonders why the king hasn't visited her, until he tries cooking for her, failing miserably. She still eats it, despite its awful taste. Suddenly, she's alone in a liminal space. Seeing her father, she runs towards him, only to watch him turn into a corpse. She immediately wakes up as Hawk returns. After losing her hairpin, Yona wanders off to find it, walking into a den of snakes, forcing Hawk to save her once again. He returns the hairpin because it's the first time she's moved on her own, but is disgusted by Su-won's betrayal. Figuring Su-won's men are still searching for them, Hawk brings her to Fuga, the Wind Tribe's capital. Meanwhile, Moondog and the other generals gather at the capital. Su-won reveals the murder of King Eel. His second-in-command explains, since the princess is missing, Su-won is next in line, but Moondog refuses to take part, since Hawk is the Wind Tribe's representative. He reminds Su-won that he should have just married Yona to secure the throne, and with that, he takes his leave. Hawk tells his tribe that Yona is a lady from the court named Lena who's undergoing her training. When she goes to collect water, she finds the river dry. It turns out the Fire Tribe has dammed the river. Moondog returns, happy to see both Hawk and Yona safe, knowing Hawk would never kidnap the princess. Due to having some history with Hawk, the young Fire General's son decides to attack the merchants, making it look like bandits were the true culprits. Without any access to medicine, one of Hawk's younger brothers collapses from a lung disorder. Hang Dae, who already picked a fight with the Fire Tribe and lost, volunteers to buy some in the next village over. After all, he's their fastest rider. Hawk tells the clan to avoid an all-out conflict with the Fire Tribe. Later that night, he meets with Moondog. He asks him to agree to allow Su-won to take the throne. He uses his last order as the tribe's leader to order Moondog to keep Yona safe and hidden in Fuga. He then renounces the name Son and cuts ties with the tribe to ensure their safety. Hawk breaks into the town's weapon shop at night and finds a small sword and a bow, and pays off his tab with the shopkeeper. Hang Dae's medicine works, but the merchants didn't fare quite as well. When Yona sees how much pain the Fire Tribe has caused under Su-won's orders, she can't stay. She'd be endangering the tribe's members. Hawk tells her he doesn't owe her anything now that he doesn't have a title. He's just a hired sword now, but he's still powerless to refuse Yona's wishes. Moondog slackens his bowstring that he was aiming at Hawk for his treatment of the princess. He tells the pair to seek out a priest who lives in an uninhabitable land. The young Fire Tribe general's son, Tae-jun, and his forces are already waiting to ambush them on the cliffside. He tries to give a planned speech, but Hawk is busy showing Yona the view, flustering Tae-jun. Shielding the princess, Hawk takes an arrow intended for her to his own back. They retreat to a cave where he tells her to stay put no matter what. She hears that the arrows are tipped with poison. Worried about Hawk, she runs and pushes the archer off the ledge. Despite Tae-jun's offer to help expose Su-won, she sees right through him. He doesn't care about the kingdom in the slightest. He's paralyzed by her stare. For some reason, he can't look away. Hawk calls her an idiot for not listening, more so out of worry than anger. He's not doing so hot. The poison is starting to take effect. He's knocked off the cliff, catching the ledge just in time. The princess takes Tae-jun's sword and cuts her own hair to escape his grasp. The soldiers hesitate, seeing the burning rage in her eyes. She goes to help him up, but the soldiers can't save the princess in time as the two careen over the edge of the cliff. Surely, the fall was enough to kill them. Tae-jun begs Su-won to punish him, even execute him. Representatives from the Wind Tribe appear at the castle to agree to his coronation. A young boy finds the bodies of Hawk and Yona at the bottom of the valley. Despite becoming king, Su-won regrets that both of his childhood friends were not able to be there. He gives a strong speech, condemning to death anyone who defies his reign. Yona wakes up inside an unfamiliar hut to an unfamiliar boy. Immediately asking where Hawk is, the boy points to her unconscious protector. Apparently, he used the trees to try and break their fall, along with his body, which is littered with bandages. If Yoon hadn't found them, they might have actually died. A strange man, covered in mud, walks into the hut, claiming to have fallen while conferring with the gods, and proceeds to fall again. He introduces himself as Iksu. She's surprised when he addresses her by her real name and title, and can't believe he's the priest who predicted the divine prophecy Moondog spoke of. Yona worries that Hawk won't pull through, but Yoon assures her that he'll be fine as he regains consciousness. Still bedridden, he becomes feverish. She pleads with Yoon to save Hawk, but he snaps at her. She hasn't even thanked him yet for rescuing them. Has she ever thanked Hawk for saving her life? Iksu affirms that Hawk will be okay. The gods have plans for him. That night, she apologizes, thanking Yoon and asking him to teach her about the priests and why they disappeared. Apparently, they had enough influence in the kingdom to overthrow a king at one point. But Yona's uncle, Yuhan, drove most of them out of the kingdom, fearing their power and influence. Hawk is gone when Yona wakes up in the middle of the night. Rushing outside, she starts crying, falling to her knees, screaming his name. He casually shows up behind her, and she tells him she needs him by her side. He leans in for a kiss, but the princess is oblivious, and Hawk plays it off. In the morning, Yona finds Iksu sitting cross-legged on a cliff by a waterfall, crying. He tells her that he'll deliver the words of the gods. The 4 dragons will gather, the sword and shield will awaken, and the crimson dragon will return from dawn. Yona recognizes the crimson dragon from the kingdom's creation story. The crimson dragon came to Earth in human form and ruled as the kingdom's first sovereign. The crimson dragon refused to return when the other 4 dragons asked, despite the humans' betrayal. So, the 4 dragons bestowed the gift of dragon's blood upon 4 warriors, granting them different abilities, the very power of the dragons themselves. Iksu tells Yona to seek out the 4 dragon warriors. Hawk is in bad shape as it is and won't be able to protect her alone. Hawk says he'll follow her regardless, if it's what she really wants. Iksu requests a favor after they make their decision. He wishes for them to take Yoon with them on their journey. Yoon makes the princess new clothes and helps even out her hair. Thanking him, she thinks there's nothing he can't do, but Yoon says there's more to learn. He can even memorize any book with a single read. She asks if he wants to read more, as their collection isn't exactly a library. Yoon eavesdrops on Iksu and Yona, discussing whether to take him with them. After confronting him, Iksu tells Yoon he shouldn't be isolated. 7 years ago, a young Yoon was famished and desperate. Seeing the priest walk by, he threw a stone at his head, knocking him over. Iksu begins crying since he doesn't have any money to give him, wishing he did. Yoon offers to let him stay for the night and puts salve on his wounds. The next day, Iksu brings back a potato that he traded for, and Yoon notices he's not wearing shoes. Yoon wonders why he would trade them for some food for him, never knowing such altruistic intentions. Iksu teaches him how to make sandals out of straw, but Yoon is apparently a quick study, and Iksu's are a joke compared to his. After waiting months for his return, Iksu returns, but he's in rough shape and doesn't have any of the goods he promised to bring back. Yoon ends up deciding to go with the princess, and Iksu makes him some new sandals. Yoon returns the favor, still much better at it. Iksu trips, but catches himself and doesn't fall for the first time. He'll be fine. They set off on their journey, but they only know where one of the 4 dragons lives. The rest are from nomadic tribes. Getting to the mountain village Iksu spoke of requires them to travel through Fire Tribe territory, near the capital. They stop in a small village. When Hawk leaves them in a tea house, Yona learns that Su Wan has been crowned king, causing her to suddenly stand up and leave. Yoon catches her before some Fire Tribe soldiers find them. Hiding in an alley, someone clasps their hand over Yona's mouth from behind. It's only Hawk though. It's time to go. The princess demands Hawk teach her combat skills, but he refuses to give her a sword. Yona begins practicing archery as much as she can, even staying up through the night. Yoon tells her that carrying a weapon means you have to be willing to take a life. On the trail, the princess tries to hit a small animal, only grazing it. Hawk says she only missed because she hesitated. Telling Yoon to go on ahead, Hawk tries teaching her how to hit a moving target, using himself as the target, but she doesn't come close until he tells her to imagine that he's Soo-won. She doesn't hesitate to let her arrow fly, grazing his cheek. They find Yoon's belongings abandoned as they try making their way through the thick fog in their path. Someone warns them to leave immediately, but they can't believe it when Hawk clears the fog with a single swing. Yona asks if they are the tribe carrying the white dragon's blood. Hesitant at first, they notice her crimson hair, astonishing them. Restrained, Yoon yells at the villagers to let him out of the cage when Hawk and Yona show up as one of the villagers gives them a tour. The white dragon grows restless. He doesn't want to sit around and wait for their master Reincarnate to arrive after thousands of years and countless generations of waiting for the king's return. Upon hearing that outsiders made their way into the village, he's determined to use his powers to help instead of being pampered all the time. But when he sees Yona, his blood starts boiling, and he hears a voice telling him the king has returned. He shall serve and protect the king as the white dragon's avatar. The villagers begin to bow after seeing the white dragon's hand react in her presence. She asks him to join them in finding the rest of the dragon warriors. He agrees without hesitation. The white dragon tries to buy Hawk off, telling him he's no longer needed, prompting Hawk to call him the white snake going forward. The village celebrates the return of the king, extending the festivities for several hours before seeing them off the next morning. They have no idea where to even start looking for the next dragon warrior. Then the white dragon, who tells Yona his name is Gija, reveals he can actually sense the other dragon's presence. Yoon asks which dragon is closest, the blue dragon. Instead of knowing precisely where they are, he has a vague idea of the direction, but that's about it. He tries leading the way, but falls into a ditch, terrified of insects. Hawk and Gija sense multiple people approaching. It's a group of bandits. Gija's right arm grows, all of a sudden becoming adept at battle. Gija realizes he doesn't need to protect Hawk at all. Yona injures one with a bow while Yoon helps her aim, before she's taken hostage, for about 2 seconds before the bandit needs some of his band's aid. Hawk collapses. His wounds still haven't healed. After a night of rest, they're ready to move out, narrowing their search down to a few villages. But it's a no-go, and the blue dragon is a no-show. Gija notices Yona practicing her archery late at night, but Hawk tells him to let her be. Her father never let her touch a weapon, and she refuses to remain powerless to save others, let alone herself. The next day, Yoon has an epiphany. There's a village in the mountains, but everyone always assumes it's uninhabitable. The party isn't given the same warm welcome upon arrival. People wearing masks watch them without engaging with the outsiders. Despite Gija's certainty that the blue dragon is in the village, the leader maintains that he has no idea what they are talking about. While allowing them to rest, the village leader warns them that the tunnels in the mountain are like a maze, and should they become lost, he isn't responsible for anything that happens to them. Yoon gets a bad feeling, like someone's watching them, and they decide to go back. But a squirrel distracts Yona, and she stumbles into a secret entrance. One of the villagers promises to show her the way back, though his intentions are sinister. Before anything happens, someone wearing a mask steps in and saves her. The blue dragon has a flashback to his past. After finding out the new dragon warrior was born, the village leaves him in the care of his predecessor, Ao. Both of them are isolated from the rest of the village due to their power. The villagers keep up the rumor of a curse that looking into their eyes turns people to stone, which isn't exactly true. He has incredible sight and can paralyze his enemies, though they paralyze themselves in the process. But as time went on, Ao's powers slowly transferred to his successor, until one day he became completely blind. The village comes under attack, and he uses his power to kill a large group of bandits, causing the village's fear to grow, giving them all the more reason to keep him locked away. The return of the king, the long-lost Crimson Dragon, is the only one who can save him now. Thank you for listening until the end. Subscribe for more videos like this.